Yeah, it did appear as though parties had conventions in terms of how they went about all of these things, maybe with respect to their constitution. But do you think that philosophical aspect of the president's speech, I belong to no one, I belong to everyone, kind of threw spanners in the works? Because we have people who told us here, look, the president has said he will not interfere, and so why should the party try to put some sort of impediment to us deciding how we flow on the floor of the House?
The president indeed is a presidential president. He's not a parliamentary president. A parliamentary president would always almost hold onto the enclave of his party or her party. But a presidential president like Woodrow Wilson, if he was stopped at any point in time, remember 1927, before, when the Depression was setting in, he threatened to go back to the people because they voted him in. So the responsibility of a President Buhari is to the Nigerian people, not to individual. In fact, he will give, of course, he will have preference for his party men, but it doesn't mean that if the party interest conflicts with the national interest, that he's going to forgo the national interest for the party. And he must be understood along those lines. It doesn't mean that he doesn't come from a party. He does.
A lot of people say that, you know, this is, we've seen this before. In the early days of our democracy, at least in the Fourth Republic in 1999, you know, we saw all of this leadership tussle, especially manifesting in the National Assembly, and it would seem that we're seeing it again. The question will be, how many cycles do you think that a country will go through before it's finally able to establish a firm grasp or can say we finally have a democracy here?
Mokwe, this is an important question. This is the luxury of pioneers. Pioneers rise and fall until they find their path. But subsequent guys are not given that liberty to rise and fall, right? Because if you look at the American system, from independence in the 18th century till after the Civil War, in fact, they were having this problem. But the point you are making, why must we reinvent the wheel? Can't we copy? Yes, we will copy. But I think 1999 to this point, 16 years. Now, the issue has arisen. Should parties go to sleep after election? After election, they will know that there are ambitious, of course, any politician without ambition is not a politician, right? Winners will have ambition. It will now depend on how the party structure, party organization would harness this to strength.
Are they allowed to be over-ambitious?
Oh, well, over-ambition is a question, it's a relative term. We want to consider over-ambitious. Maybe another person's starting point in his ladder of ambition.
Yeah, but, you know, you just talked about copying. And one of the things that came out in the U.S. system is that the vice president is the leader of the Senate. Or is it the president of the Senate?
He's the president. It's a nominal role. The most important person in American Congress is the speaker. Right?
Should we have that system as well? Maybe we should retain
well,
that.
with time, we will try. It's just like, I don't want to take your time. Maybe later we'll talk about the budget system. The budget system is too parliamentary in Nigeria. It does not reflect the realities of a presidential system where the mandatory spending is recurrent and the discretionary spending is capital. It means you develop at will. Do you get? But in America, presidential system, right? Mandatory is capital. Discretionary is, you know, you call it recurrent, which is why you see sometimes if budget is not approved, government shuts down, right? Because it has to do with discretionary. Appropriation has no business dealing with capital project every year, because when once a program has been passed into law, it is strike law that no intention of the parliament suffers from poor implementation. When once you have passed a program, the program must be funded and must succeed. But that's for another day. What we are saying, can we copy? Yes, of course. In America, what do? For instance, senators don't go for election at the same time, as well as members of Congress. So it's 2 years.
Yes. 2 years for Congress.
For Congress. For
the Senate have a longer term.
6 years. But 1/3 will always go for election.
Midterm.
In which case, when you talk about the standing rule of Senate, yes, the Senate is still alive, and they can, you know, amend their standing rule before the new people come, right? But in Nigeria, everybody goes at the same time, everybody comes, there's no continuity and that kind of thing, which is why we always quarrel about the new members after every election. These are things, Mark, where over time we begin to correct.
You know, one other aspect we ignoring, or maybe we haven't touched, is looking at the composition of the National Assembly now, should also make us to start looking at the appointees, appointments, and how this assembly will sit and pass some of those that the president will bring before them. Do you see, well, a system whereby, for the first time, we will likely see, again, debates, you know, inquests into some of the activities of some of these people that will be brought before the assembly, instead of the traditional taking a bow and walking away?
I know you are referring to those of us who were members of the House. It's what we call parliamentary privilege. Like, I can still claim I'm Honorable Chris Asoluka, even it's 21, 22 years I was in the House. But when once you have been a member of that hallowed chamber, your membership is still recognized, which is why if I go to House of Rep, with the leave of the Speaker, I can sit in the hallowed chamber. But when you do that, point of order, a stranger is in our midst. So when it
Except it's in the gallery.
Your gallery. And when we are going for, you know, executive section or committee of the whole, you are asked to go. What we are saying, a member of the House, there is this presumption that if you've been a member of Senate or the House, you've met the minimum condition. So if you are appointed, those facts, unless there are new evidence to vitiate that presumption, you are asked as a convention to take a bow. And for others, with time, you are right. Like in America, sometimes if you bring the list of nominees to Senate, they will be interested in knowing the portfolios those you are nominees,
to the names,
you know, will take.
Which we clamored for.
Correct,
here.
so that they will grill the guy in terms of suitability. Rather than like we say in Nigeria, the problem or the crisis of governance we have is we have tested parliamentary system, and we still have key players in that parliamentary system around.
In a presidential system?
In the presidential system, either in 1999 or so. So they have a way of influencing our thinking in the parliamentary form. Take Shagari's 1979, when he looked for coalition with MPP. It was unnecessary. That was a parliamentary mindset. In a presidential mindset, you could have a broken government, but like Obama, Buena is the leader, is the speaker in the House of Reps. He's a Republican. And with the new election, even the Senate could be lost.
But do we still see that same mindset in terms of the kinds of debates that go on the floor of the House of Reps or Senate? That parliamentary mindset?
You see, people are very, very eager to criticize the National Assembly. The real work in National Assembly is not the plenary. Plenary is showmanship. It's just to look and define that you are involved in the decision-making process. The real National Assembly work is at the committee stage. For instance, when a bill comes, we give a first reading. First reading is to declare what we say a legislative notice to all, that before us is a request for the enactment of this bill. It's not to be debated because you can bring any trash to be legislated upon. But when you do the second reading, we now argue on principles. Is this necessary? What is it trying to achieve? Is it not repeating an old law? If it is repeating an old law, what is the difference? So that you don't waste legislative time. When it crosses that Rubicon, that hurdle of second reading, now you commit it to committee. It's committee that the real work of the legislature, you know, is done.
The committee eventually brings it back to
yes,
the...
for the third reading and what we call clause by clause approval.
One of the, okay, we're already being wound up, I think. So
Well,
perhaps I'll hold my question for another time.
Okay, and this looks as though before I started it's over, but you know, there's so many matters that need to be focused on, because many have suggested we actually focus on our budget system and see how we could do something about that.
I'm ready for that.
Yeah, we should do that in the days ahead. But thank you for coming on. Dr. Chris Asoluka is a governance and legislative expert. We'll be back. Yeah, we'll still have some time to take a look at your comments. Okay, I guess not. But
It's a wrap.
that's the show then today. What a day. We'll be back next week. Thank you for watching. I'm Chamberlain Osal.
More like, what a week. Thank you.
Many thanks. I'm Sulaiman Alede. See you again.